Give me the full answer, man. We got the time right now.
We're 90s kids, so we were blessed to be around like the ascension of whatever you want to call it, like shitty PCs coming to like greater PCs. So like we were always kind of around it. I think the first PC I had was like a Compaq Presario, like Windows 95, maybe Windows 98. So I was always kind of interested of just like, playing with the PC, right? That was like kind of our era, playing games on it, no internet, whatever. And, fast forward a little bit, once I got into what really kind of got me more behind the wheel of it versus just being a user of it was in high school. So you went to the same high school. As you know, there was a electronics and robotics academy there, which I did for all 4 years. So the way that worked was it wasn't really focused on PCs and stuff like that yet. It's more about like the electrical engineering schematics, doing stuff like that. So year one, you learn the more concepts, and this is going like very low level. This is the electron and the switch, right? So not just what you see in the software layer, but year one, basically, you just solder like small kits. You make like alarm clocks, little race cars. You have a kit. You learn your resistor color codes. You learn like what diodes are, all the moving pieces that you require to make a circuit, right? And that's the first thing that class taught me, that nothing's an all-inclusive system. Everything's a system of components. And so, yeah, again, year one, you get a small kit, you figure out what components you require, and then you make, a small alarm clock, little race car, like a light up, like a little light up toy, whatever. And then second year, you do similar stuff. You need to know your fundamentals, like what coulombs are, what, Ohm's law is, Watt's law is, this is, power, voltage, all that kind of stuff. So second year, you get into the same logic, but a little bit more advanced, but you're understanding the concept of like boards and circuitry. Third year, again, a little bit more advanced. And by fourth year, what really happens is my instructor at the time, what she would do is she'll give you a copper board with some tape and a crock pot full of acid, and it's up to you to design something, build it, and execute it. So I think fourth year, I built a small amplifier that you can put like on a bike and power an iPad, and it'll push a speaker. Ultimately, what happened was once senior year I graduate, kind of the top 4 students in that class, which I was one of them, gets offered an internship with the school district, not only fixing motherboards, but also working pretty much in help desk desktop support, which I wasn't really used to yet. I didn't really know like how IT worked from like a job standpoint, like what jobs there were, what you do in IT. And it's, what I used to do on top of just fixing, circuitry and boards, we worked on the help desk and desktop. We would image laptops, go deploy them to teachers. The teachers would, maybe put in a ticket, hey, I don't have, Adobe PDF is not working, whatever. And that was kind of my entry point, actually solving problems with the PC. The simple stuff, right? Going to the control panel, uninstalling stuff, patching things, installing things. On top of that, we did some physical work too, like installing projectors, stuff, that kind of stuff. But long story short, at the time, I was already working another job. Like I was always working like at a restaurant or service industry job. And I kind of thought to myself, like, I kind of enjoy doing this IT work, and I didn't think I'd make a full career out of it, but I can do this. I enjoy it. I can pay my bills a little bit better. So that internship, again, was only 4 months, because the way it works is after that year, the next seniors do it, right? And when it was over, I was actually offered a job, and this is back in 2007, 2008, one of those years. So I was actually offered a job with them for 17 an hour. And for like a 17-year-old kid, that was a lot of money. At the time, only made $8 an hour at each job. So
Yeah, that's a lot of money, man.
but the one thing I understood over there was the only on-site, or let's say full-time employees they had for the school district were only help desk desktop support, right? It was $17 an hour, and maximum, I believe, was 21. And after that, everything was contracted out. Even at that young age, I kind of knew that it would pay well, but after 4 or 5 years, 21 will not be enough for me to scale and be better and grow. And I would never be able to go to like a tier 3 group, like networking, servers, security, those type of things. And this is one thing you're going to notice in my career. I had to make the harsh decision of like turning down job offers to make sure that I was on a ladder that allowed me to grow more. So I didn't accept it, and I just thought to myself, like, okay, how could I get in this career field and still have a way to ascend? So I started applying for jobs with the public sector. At the time, I had the skill developed. If you're passionate about something, you're going to put your heart and soul into it and keep learning. Like when I was going home, I was just searching small things. How do you install a Photoshop? How do you activate this? How to use the command line. So I was excelling at that. And I would apply for 3 jobs. And back then, I thought the interviews were more aggressive back then than they are now. So like the first 3 interviews I did, what you would do is you would take a PC apart and you had to point like, okay, what's the CPU? What's RAM? What's the power supply? What's the purpose of this? And if you can't do all that, you don't make it to the second interview where you actually talk face to face and have a conversation. So I did 3 interviews, 3 follow-up interviews, missed them all. I came in second every time.
Shoot,
So
so
I'm
they
not gonna
changed a
lie to
lot
you.
now from the industry that we are right now. Everything's through Zoom or calls. So that's a big
Yeah,
change from the.
yeah, and it's easier to fluff it now. I mean, unless you know the game, and when I used to interview people, I can tell if they're BSing me or not. But I think with just straight Zoom and asking people quiz questions, it's honestly easy to fluff it. And back then, it wasn't like that because it's like you're working on desktop, you're working on hardware. If you can't point out the hardware, which is going to include in the job, then why should you even make it to the second interview? But fortunately, so after I didn't get any of those 3 jobs. I came in second every time. So I was a little bit, obviously upset about it and like, that sucks. Fortunately, one of the persons that interviewed me, he called me and gave me some advice on things I had to tighten up. Like he knew functionally I'd probably be the best person for the job, but I just wasn't good at interviewing. So like he gave me some good advice, like, give clear examples, give more details, give the results of the projects you worked on. Like don't just say like, I imaged a PC for 1,000 teachers. Like what was the result on that? Like it could be something like, okay, after we deployed all these PCs, these people were able to deploy or use more apps in their day-to-day and to make their lives easier, something like that. So I took that to heart, kept applying away. And keep in mind, this is before, like, I'm sending in paper mail applying. I'm not like applying online. That didn't exist. So I only made $8 an hour. I'm wasting all my money in stamps, basically. And sure enough, same thing. So I think that was like April 2010. And it wasn't until like September 2010 where the same thing happened. I got 3 interviews, 3 follow-up interviews, and I got them all just because I mastered the art of interviewing. The department told me, hey, like, we can start you in October. We're going to shoot you $9.50 an hour. The other 2 was like, you're not going to start till February. So you'll be February, but you'll get $12.50 an hour. Obviously, as a kid, I wanted a little bit more money, but I'm like, what I can do is go with the $9.50. Also in parallel at this time at Sac City. So like my original part of my career is more computer electrical engineering. So I'm going to school. I'm pretty much doing chemistry, calculus, physics. I did that for three semesters straight. And I won't lie to you, that does play into, I think, the technical analysis and ability, because even though people have that question like, oh, when am I ever going to use math? When am I ever use physics? It's really about making your brain think a different way to deduce things. That's what algebra is, what calculus is, and physics is more applied to that. So to me, that does become important. So I'm going to school, and I'm also taking, I think, ethical hacking. I did that for like, I think a year and a half. So now I took the first job offer. I'm working on a help desk. It kind of opened my mind up to more things, not just, imaging PCs, deploying PCs, but like the politics, the people you got to deal with, how you talk to them. It was a larger department. There's different business units. What's the mission of the business? And one thing I'll add is because I worked service industry jobs like restaurants, I had the communication skills. I wasn't afraid to walk down to somebody, talk to them, troubleshoot. Always had a good rapport with the customers. So those were things I was really learning. But the one thing, as I kind of advanced was like, and Efren, this, like sometimes you do a help desk ticket or a desktop ticket and you find out, hey, it's not a desktop issue. So my lead would tell me, oh, go route the ticket to database, or go route the ticket to server, or go route the ticket to web dev or network. And even though I did that, I really didn't know like what was happening behind the scenes. And for me, I'm always curious. Like I want to know how everything works top to bottom, even if I only work on one piece. That's actually one thing our dad taught us. I used to work on cars as a kid, like building motors. It's just like IT. Building motors is fun. Troubleshooting cars sucks, but that's how you really learn.
I think everybody in IT, they get that curiosity, man. That you're like, yeah, okay, I'm doing one little part from IT, but you also get curious, like, what's going on in the database, what's going on over there in networking, what's going on with
100%.
cyber. So you got kind of, and that's the thing that makes a lot of IT stand out. The ones that they really are trying to grow,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way they can stand out because they're so curious about other departments, other places. And pretty
Right.
much what you're talking about right now, whenever I get a ticket or something and it has to go to a network team, a developer team, I get
Exactly.
curious and I start picking their brains too about it too. So I think that's one of the biggest key points too that you're mentioning right now, that it's perfect to have that curiosity, especially even if you're in a lower level, entry level, mid level, high level, it's
Hmm.
good to have that curiosity still.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I said, and it's nothing's an all-inclusive system. It's just of a component. So yeah, each department's like a component, but we're all trying to drive the business. In the same way, if you work on cars, you need to understand intake, exhaust, long blocks, valves, combustion, right? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to have someone to drive the car, not just do your one piece, right? That's really the end result. So, they give you the commands and all that. Do this, find this file, da da da. And I talked to my instructor one day. I'm like, look, if I did this in real life, like, how would I give myself those own instruction, right? Because you're just telling me what to do. And by the way, the reason I did ethical hacking, one of my favorite writing pieces of all time, and everything you know this, I write and do stuff on the side. It's called the Hacker's Manifesto. If you haven't read it, read it. But I was like, oh man, hacking seems so cool. So while I was in desktop, like, I'm gonna become a
Yeah.
hacker. But I'm like, I was naive and stupid, bro. I just thought like I can just hit the easy button hack. I got you hacked. I'm like, I didn't realize like hacking is not linear. There's not one way to hack. Hacking just means you're using something for the intentions and that's what to be used for. And that's why I initially took ethical hacking because I thought I could get a hacker like in a year and just be, doing some weird stuff and get diffusing bombs in, other countries and stuff. But it didn't work that way.
That's what everybody thinks about hacking, man.
Yeah, it's
Everything you
not
see in the
linear. There
movies.
isn't like one way to hack. Like I have your SSH keys, I'm gonna hack you. But yeah, the combination of that and then me not being satisfied of like understanding the overall tapestry of IT, right? Because it's like you're looking at a 100-foot canvas standing 1 foot away. I wanted to find a way to back up more and see the whole vision. So those two things, I'm like, okay, I gotta learn networking. And my end goal was to get back to cyber back then. But I'm like, I had to accept that it's gonna take time. And I was like, just because I take networking, it doesn't mean I'm going to learn ultimately about databases directly or servers directly, but you kind of do. If you take those other things directly, you may not learn networking, but you need to know it. So I took Network Plus first. I'm not going to lie to you, it was pretty easy for me. And then what happened was at the agency I was working at, they sent the full-time employees to a Cisco CCNA boot camp. I couldn't go because I was pretty much a student intern. I'm more like a contractor. Keep in mind, this time I did get called back by those other two agencies for $12.50 an hour. And I had talked to my boss about it and she was willing to let me go. But my boss was so cool. I kind of went home and thought about it. And I was like, like I'm guaranteed more money. I'm not guaranteed a cool boss. So I never left. And I'm glad I didn't because you're going to see why. So I found out, okay, I want to take CCNA like these guys, right? How do I do that? So I look up at Sacramento City College. At the time, they had basically 4 courses that would make up the whole CCNA, and it was like $26 a unit. So 3 units per class, $72, $71.44, so less than $300 for all 4 courses. And I was taking them, and it was really clicking with me. One of the guys who sat next to me told me, like, watch, after subnetting, half the kids are going to drop, and that literally happened. So I was working on that, working at Packet Tracer in labs. Even my instructor said that he was my same instructor for ethical hacking. He said, you're doing really well with this. And when I was back at my state agency where I was working, my boss always had the rule that, hey, if there is any downtime, you guys are allowed to work on your schoolwork because we're student interns. And one day I'm sitting there, I'm subnetting in my little CCNA book. I'm doing a few other things, and the network manager walks by. And he kind of looks over at my work. He kind of sees how I'm thinking, what I'm doing. And he's like, are you like studying networking? I'm like, yeah, I'm taking CCNA. And then he goes, okay, let me go talk to your boss. A week later, they both come talk to me. But basically, they said, hey, we
Shoot,
took it up with the chief.
that's impressive right there, man. That's definitely impressive.
Yeah,
They've
because
been
at the
here.
time, Efrain, there wasn't ever like a student that was in a tier 2 group ever. From what I saw, they were always help desk, maybe desktop, which is 2. We were on a consolidated help desk, right, where you do desktop and help desk together. So they had to take it up with him, and they came back to me and said, hey, like, here's what's going to happen. You're going to work on the network team because they needed help too, 2 days a week, and you're going to work with us 3 days a week on desktop help desk. And again, they took it up with the chief, and what the message I heard from was like, if I mess up, I'm out. And long story short, I never messed up. But yeah, the first thing I did, my new network lead, he tossed me a switch. He's like, hey, how do you archive a switch? And archive is actually how you image it. And ironically enough, you never learned that in CCNA at the time. Maybe they changed it in today's world, but back then, once you're configuring packet tracer, the switch is already up. So I had to research it, figure it out, get the image. I don't even know if USB was that big. Maybe there was USB back then,
Just,
but yeah,
and
get
just to
the,
give everybody a heads up on whoever's listening to this, At this time, there was no ChatGPT, there was no AIs, there was no platforms like that. I don't think there was even
No
barely even YouTube. And I think the only way to really research at
books,
that time was books. Yeah.
books.
What year?
Yeah,
What year was this
it,
around?
this is 2011 because I started there. It could be 2011 because I did CCNA from March to September 2011. So this is probably around June, July 2011, right?
Yeah.
Because
So
I
at this
was
time, man,
probably
barely YouTube was not. I don't think YouTube was even out yet. And
no,
if it wasn't that mature yet, it was
there's no
more about.
content though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
no
was
one's
just
making content on it. Yeah.
like yeah, little cat memes, and there was cat memes and fights and random videos.
No, I mean you can Google it a little, but again, what sites is it going to take you to? Well, to take you to where there's actually knowledge base. It's barely. It's like
Yeah,
again, us
yeah.
working
That's
on
all.
cars. Like,
There was
yeah, it's
almost
the
no
same
knowledge
thing.
bases, no articles, nothing. It was very limited, so everything was on books at that time.
Again, like taking it back to cars, like now you can have an issue the car and look up the exact issue and someone has it on YouTube. Back then we were reading Chilton books. And then one thing I used to do on the help desk was we used to move PCs around. And this is before network access control was big. I mean, it's still network access control, but back then it was just port security, which is directly on the port. So whenever I moved a PC, let's say from like a third floor or floor four, I would call the network person and they would say, okay, we're going to change it. So I knew I had to call them. So now that I'm on the network team, I did that. The desktop team would call me and I realized, okay, man, there's not like one network device or one flat network. There's like so many pieces, so many switches, so many routers per floor. I had multiple IDF closets, walk in there, figure out what switch is what. And they would call me and what I would do at the time is take a MAC address from their PC that's bound to one port, clear it and put on the next port. And that's what I did a lot in my day-to-day operations was that doing the switching. I would set up like wireless passwords for like if we had a vendor coming through. And I don't know what it was, Efren. I thought I was dope at AF for just, using the command line. I thought it was cool. Like I'm learning the command line, I'm using it, configuring stuff. So I just like really enjoyed doing that. Again, at that time, I didn't really work on firewalls or routers yet. Again, I'm just like a student, so I just mainly just did switching and stuff, but I had way more interest in networking. So instead of it just giving me, higher knowledge, I just like doing it. On top of that, because where I worked was really small, the networking team, server team, database team were really tight knit. So the server team actually showed me how to build servers. So if I wanted to build one server, I could do it on my own. Now, if I had 10 of them, I'd hand it off to them. Same thing with switching. They could do switches too. So we were actually cross-functional. It wasn't like large agency where everyone does the Chipotle model where they do one thing. No, we can all make a burrito. That's how it worked out. So then now I'm
That's
stitching.
a good way to explain it too.
That's what you see in today's world, unfortunately, sometimes. And I remember, and some of the server guys, not only the way they would really learn is not just doing the day-to-day for their work. One of the guys took Android Honeycomb at the time, it was 3.0, right? And he loaded it onto a PC. And now that's probably pretty easy, but that was pretty intense doing that. So just doing little weird, quirky stuff like that
Remember
showed
at that
me,
time, bro, that was insane. That was like, if you seen
yeah,
that happening, that was like, dude, are
IT,
you?
yeah, like
Yeah,
it's nuts. And
they
this
were
is
already
like even
considering you as a hacker right there, man.
And I remember I would also rack the servers and the network gear for the teams. And again, this is before like even blade servers, right? These are all one-to-one and they're heavy as HE double hockey sticks. So I was doing that. And then I remember one of my first projects was converting to blade servers. And that was a big move, like before VMs and stuff like that, right? And at the time, I think what was supposed to happen was they were going to bring me fully on board in a lower position because they liked how I worked. They liked how I thought. I had the cross-functional experience of desktop, help desk, networking now at a base level. And I was really good with the customers. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. The position got repurposed. And this was like kind of my first like slap in the face of like, how politics and the game really works. My boss was really trying to get me in, so it wasn't on her. There was something, else going on. And she kept telling everyone, like, if we don't get this kid, like, he's going to be gone. Like, the logic upstairs was like, well, we'll just wait it out till next year. And instead, I started applying for other roles, elsewhere, again, where I can have a little bit more upward mobility. And I really wanted to do more networking, but I knew my entry point again to get into like a larger agency would be help desk desktop because it's more of a bottom position. I wouldn't say bottom, but it's the trajectory of IT is help desk desktop, and then you go to tier 3 groups. So I started applying just to get in. And on a second note, I did want to purposely go back to help desk desktop if I left because I think it's very important you understand how the business works, who your customers are, who your business partners are, what type of work they do, what type of apps they use on a desktop. If you do it on the front end, the back end networking becomes easier. So finally, I think 3 months later, I got 2 offers. I got another offer for an analyst role, which is 1 tier higher, like a level 2, for 40 hours a week and full benefits and not an 18-month contract. Guess which one I picked? I'll let you guess.
I don't know, man. The money sounds pretty good, but you said it was the other
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I went with the other one, and literally everyone called me stupid for that. There was not one person on my side on that one. Even my leads, man, everyone, you always take the money, full-time job, benefits. But I knew if I had the
But
trust in myself, yeah.
but let me ask you this: what do
hmm
you think that there's something like this aligned more to your career in the future career, or was it more like you're a little bit more comfortable in the situation?
It was more upward mobility because I knew, so the one that was going to pay me more money, it was more of a annex office where there's only like 10 or 14 people working. So it's okay, I can excel out there, but what's the probability of me promoting? Somebody needs to die or something needs to happen versus going to the other site where there's 4,000 people and IT is like in the hundreds of people. So I just knew I would have a higher probability of ascension with the lower paying job. So that's really what it came down to. It's not it's the work. It's like where the work's applied. And yeah,
And
so
that's a good strategy, man. That not a lot of people look at it like that.
yeah.
They don't look at it as like a strategy base. They just look at it as like, they're paying me more. I should just go over there.
And
But
it's harder. Then it gets harder to lateral to a different one because they don't know who you are. And once you start making more money, you're not going to want to come down the ladder. You want to keep up or go parallel. And the other place doesn't know who you are. So if you decide, hey, I want to leave, it gets more difficult. So I decided on that one. And 6 months later, I got my first promotion. So I did desktop, really hit it off with the customers, learned everything in and out. I still had the hunger, passion. I would take a lot of projects on and work overtime. Yeah, 6 months later, I ended up getting my first promotion, which was the same position as that other job. It ended up working out. Now I'm like in an analyst role, primarily supporting like finance, investors, a little bit understanding their front end applications, the more aggressive nature of their work and how quickly they have to fix things. And this is where I take my desktop game to another level because I wasn't really that good at scripting and stuff. But then I started being put in scenarios where it's, man, if I, again, this is before like automation tools and like software deployment tools, like, man, if I want to do an app update to 100 PCs and I need to get done by Friday and it's Wednesday, I have to learn how to script. So I started using just like PowerShell,
yeah,
not even
that makes a
PowerShell
lot of
back.
sense.
Yeah, just like batch scripting and using PSExec. Remember PSExec? It was like
Which one?
a PSExec. So it's like
No.
command line on steroids. It's like one of the, so like you can pretty much have more administrative access to the command line.
So you
Yeah, they
started
still
right in
exist
the
today.
beginning, huh?
This is 2013. So like a simple one you can do is you can go PS logged on, whack whack computer name. It'll tell you who's logged onto a computer back-ended. And then if you wanted to install an application that wasn't on your PC, you do PSExec space whack whack PC name space in the executable you want to run. And then you put it on steroids where you copy the file, run the file, and it was all interactive. So I started doing that for my team. Was super successful doing that. On top of that, just doing regular projects like PC refreshes and just the normal desktop troubleshooting. And then because I was doing all those things, like I'm another promotion. This is 2 years later, so it's 2015. And now I'm the lead technical analyst on the team, like where all the more heavy technical work comes to me or gets escalated to me. I was taking on projects, doing the same stuff, working with the finance investment departments to upgrade their applications for trading and doing all this other type of stuff. And I really got cool with those customers and we took it to like a whole different level. And because I did so well in desktop, whenever there was a time the networking or tier 3 groups would need a desktop resource, my boss would always give them me. And we had at the time 50 people in desktop. There was like not 50, maybe, yeah, close to 50, but about 30 actual analysts because they're split across 5 teams. She'd always send me. So the networking team kind of started seeing my skill set at the desktop level. And then I kind of talked to them and said, hey, I know like switching and a few things too. I told one of the guys like, hey, I want to become a network engineer. And he looked at me and later he just becomes one of my best mentors. But he looks at me, he goes, yeah, kid, everyone effing says that. Because a lot of people do say that. And I said, okay. So then I keep doing my hustle. Every promotion I get, I tell him and he starts seeing it. And then finally, less than a year later, actually, July 2016, there's actually June 25th is when it was, but there's a journey engineering position on the networking team. So I go for it. You know, at this point, I'm really strong in interviewing. I get it. And not only do I get it, but all three of the leads who are like the lead architects, because a journey engineer, senior engineer, and then you have principal engineer, network architect, they all vouch for me. So I got that job. On the day-to-day operations, I kind of did what I did at my original agency, like switching and stuff, but this agency's 20, 30 times bigger. There's way more equipment. And I'll do that, and I'll also implement like firewall rules. So you get a request, hey, can you allow Efren's PC to access this database or TCP 1433? At the time, I knew ports and stuff. I really didn't like master the art of ports. And the main thing I didn't know was routing, right? So I log into the firewall, get in ASDM, Cisco, all Java stuff. And I'm looking and I'm like, okay, there's not one or two interfaces on most firewalls. There isn't just like an inside outside. There was like 10, 12. So I'm like, okay, like where do I place this rule? And my lead comes over to me, he helps me out. And he's like, this is why you need to learn routing, because based on where the traffic's routed to the firewall is where you're going to implement the rules. Teaches me the fundamentals of like, place closest to the source, those type of things. So now I start, and again, while you're, the best thing, Efren, is like not having all the right answers, is asking yourself what questions to ask.
And also, you just mentioned about routing, man. Do you recommend routing for anybody that's trying to get into, let's just say, like if they're trying to get into networking or anything like that? Do you think routing would be a good process? I know you're going to that story right now, but what would you say about those fundamentals about networking?
I would say, honestly, if everyone knew routing in IT, you'd be the best of the best. I think my greatest skill till today is I'm strong in routing. I'll explain more why, but you can see the vision, you can see the road. Every router is an intersection. Just like you go to each intersection, you're going to a different destination, it's going to tell you the next hop on the street you got to turn on, right? So that's how you can see the full vision. If you know routing, you can visualize in your head.
Oh yeah, so as somebody that doesn't understand the routing aspect, let's just say, like this audience
Mm-hmm.
brand new to it. I know last
Mm-hmm.
time you explained it very simple. So would you be able to explain that again? Like how were you able to explain somebody to what is routing, how does routing work?
Routing is, layer 3, it's basically IP address to IP address communication, right? So layer 2, your layer 1 is physical media, right? Copper, fiber. By copper, I mean Ethernet. It's also radio waves, like for your wireless. Layer 2 is more MAC address, now you're coming into frames, because all networking is encapsulation, right? You're going from physical media all the way up to the application layer. So you're going from pulses of light in radio waves all the way up to where something exists as software. So it has to go through those transitions where it's like, you can look at layer 2 a little bit more like firmware. The way I look at layer 2 or MAC address is like it's all houses on the same street. Since you're on the same street, you don't need to route out the intersection, right? You can just see each other's frames. You can see the front door. That's how I look at it. But once you leave those intersections, you have to go IP to IP. Even your PCs, if they're on the same network, it's technically layer 2 communication, but since operating systems are on the software layer, they need to at least communicate over IP. Your system will then do an ARP, which is IP to MAC address translation. The way I look at that is almost like a home address to the actual door translation. But yeah, at the end of the day, any communication always has to go through the routing, because you're always translating a DNS name to an IP address. Ultimately, no matter what it is, that's what's happening. It's no different than, if you look up a store, you look up In-N-Out Burger, whatever, right? To some degree, you're not going to In-N-Out Burger. You're going to an actual physical address. Hey, it's at 100 Front Street. And that 100 Front Street is tied to a latitude and longitude in real life. That's how it works. In the same way, you put in a DNS entry, it has an IP address, like it's an actual street address. That street address tries to a MAC address eventually, just like the latitude, longitude, same kind of idea. So if you can understand traffic patterns, which you're going to learn through routing, you can see, visualize, and you can manipulate anything too. Even if you're doing hacking and stuff like that, for me, I'm not even going to target your computer. I'm just going to steal your routes and just act like I'm them. Quote unquote, I wouldn't actually do that, but hypothetically.
So pretty much understanding even the routing aspect of it, you're also learning
Mm-hmm.
cybersecurity as well.
Yeah, you
You're
have to.
understanding you're also understanding the cybersecurity fundamentals because now you're understanding the traffic, the IPs, the MAC addresses, how things are being
Mhm.
redirected or connected to it. So that shows you a little bit more. And for somebody that's trying to get into cybersecurity or you just even think of fundamentals of cybersecurity, do you think that people should know networking at least?
I think they should know top to bottom. The best cybersecurity engineers have always been former network or network security engineers, because they can see and visualize everything. And a lot of times we're the network engineers. The cybersecurity people give you direction, like the way they gave me, hey, do this policy, use, if I do a VPN tunnel, right? The way VPN tunnel works is, let's say you have 3 IP addresses. So you want 2 of them to meet and you have 1 in transit, right? But let's say your data is not encrypted and you want the 2 endpoints to talk like they're directly next to each other, right? So you create, your kind of complicated, your phase 1, phase 2 encryption, but a lot of times that direction comes from your security team, right? Use AES-256 for symmetrical encryption, and maybe use let's say SHA-256, SHA-512 for the, integrity, right? But at the same time, they're not the ones always building it. So they don't know the level of effort it takes. They don't know the routers you're placing it on. They're just giving you kind of the conceptual example. Now, if you're the actual network engineer that does that, you're seeing how you're stitching the encryption, the routing, everything together to make it all work. So for me personally, yeah, because I always say this, even though I work in cyber now and I have a strong cyber background, I would say 95% of my security experience comes from network engineering and architecture. It's hard to bypass steps.
I
Going
know
back to,
now you're going back to like let's start from the beginning as well. I know you were talking about that you're like in desktop support already or analyst role, and you're trying to go back to the help desk.
mhm,
Why did you think that that was a good step back? Like, what was the reason? I know for right now, I
mhm,
work with a lot of people at entry level or trying to get in or trying to get into ITs, and they always want to skip the help desk. Everybody wants to skip the help desk aspect of it and just go straight to cyber. And I always tell them, it's like that's almost impossible to do.
it's impossible.
You may get lucky once in a while, but you're gonna struggle through the whole process.
So the reason I wanted to go into desktop or help desk, what do you call it? I went straight to desktop, that is separate service desk, but the same concept. It was actually for like 3 reasons. One, I knew it'd be easier to get in, just to get a job. Two, I really wanted to learn the business, the customers, all that. And then kind of 3, just how everything ties together in that agency first. So the beauty was, because I knew all the departments and everything, I knew the applications they work on, I was cool with the customers. I understand what was what. When I jumped to networking, I'm like, oh, now I understand why VLAN X is for this different building and this floor and finance department. I know why VLAN Y is for HR, and I know the work they type of do. And then it's like, oh, I understand why this database is locked down for benefits because they have sensitive data in there. So when I'm implementing these firewall rules, no, I'm just not just putting 2 IP addresses in TCP 1433. I can visualize exactly what the customer is doing because I've seen them do it in front of them. That came from desktop and help desk. And ironically, sometimes the network team couldn't see that because they only worked on the back end. Desktop team could see the back end, network team couldn't see the front end. I could see it all. I saw the visualization of doing that. So that was one of the main reasons. Even when so I started working on firewalls. I began researching routing more because I go home at night. That's the other thing I did, Efren, too. Every night I'm going on Reddit, whatever, learning, doing my packet tracer lab, not just talking to my mentor and having him show me things, right? And I would also, every time we did a change control, which is after hour changes on big things, I would actually stay there at night and watch what they're doing. I can go to a $5,000 boot camp, or I can hang out with this guy for 3 hours and see what he's doing. And depending on the nature of the work, sometimes they would just describe it to me. But if it was too complex, I would just let them do what they do. And I'd watch them and I'd take notes. And the next day I would ask them, why'd you do this? Why'd you switch the route on this firewall, that firewall? And my lead would be like, hey, I swung the route and no one even noticed we swapped firewalls out. So you start
And
thinking
dude,
different.
that's the way. I think that's the way to really understand and learn. It's just taking that extra time, man. Even if you don't get paid, man, you may take a loss or something, but at least
Yeah.
you know that you can kind of pick their brains. You can ask them at that time or at that moment, and
Mhm.
that's pretty much what I've done too. I've done that with the network teams or cyber teams.
Exactly.
I volunteered. I was like, hey, I'm not getting paid. I know I shouldn't be here or something, but this is mine. I want to learn from this. I want to learn from this aspect of it. I just want to learn and pick your brain. Like you said, I can go to these boot camps, but the real hands-on experience will be pretty much being there, volunteering and connecting with somebody, and that person can
Yeah.
even be your mentor in the future too.
And the thing is, if you're hungry, people will feed you. And it doesn't mean if you're hungry, you'll eat every time. But if you're not hungry, you will never eat. And even though you don't get direct payment, monetarily, you're paying yourself in your own growth and maybe a promotion comes out of it. So you do eventually get paid or whatever. Like Like, I don't just need to be technically sound. I also need to know like how to implement things, how to transition things, make sure there's like zero downtime, like, be prepared, all this other small stuff. I can see the way they operated. Like, one of the guys was really strong at engineer, one was really strong at design and architecture. Back then, I really didn't understand what was what. But it's like, somebody needs to make the recipe, before, the chef needs to make it before the cooks can cook, right? So I'm understanding that game more. And one day, I'm still a journey engineer. They come and talk to me and they say, hey, like, we're going to give you a couple of projects that senior engineers should be doing, but if you flourish, you'll get promoted again. That's pretty much what's going to happen. Like, you always want to work for the position you want to be in, not the one you're in, because you're already in the position you're in. You're already getting paid for that, right? So I took those on, and my first one was like a wireless re-architecture. So the high level project is, hey, they just had like a small wireless. They wanted to add in, a corporate network, a guest network, a exec network, and like a lab. So now I have to, going back to the system is made of components, I have to think about all these things. And I'm looking at, okay, how did my other guys build things? You'll see like firewalls everywhere, not just like one firewall. So once I understood, okay, this is a wireless controller, here's how access point to work, this is layer 2 versus layer 3. And I did what we want to call layer 2 isolation, which is different VLANs on each access point, right? Which would mean a different Wi-Fi SSID. But once it goes to layer 3, now we're in routing, I'm actually sending each SSID to a different firewall. So the corporate one funneled back in and used a corporate ISP circuit. The guest one, I ended up getting like a smaller business service. So for those of you guys who don't know, there's kind of like 3 types of services. For like residential, like at home, that's like a best effort SLA, which will cost you anywhere from 50 to 100, whatever bucks a month you're paying. If you have enterprise, which is usually anywhere like 90 to 99% SLA, it's going to be in the tens of thousands, maybe more, maybe less. Sometimes it can be 4 or 5 thousands, but it'll be in the thousands. And if you do like a business SLA, which you may see like at a Starbucks or a hotel, which is kind of like 70% SLA, it'll be somewhere in the hundreds. So I ended up getting a business license or service with a different ISP and a whole different router. So what would happen is if you go on the guest Wi-Fi, it would completely funnel through the controller, hit the firewall will then send it to that guest router and not the corporate router. So even though you're hitting 2 SSIDs that theoretically are pumped from the same access point, they have something called layer 2 or layer 3 isolation, so they can't really talk to each other. So now here comes just the routing, the security mindset. Now, could I have just put the guest and the corporate one funneling at the same firewall and the same ISP? It would work. But the only difference then would be the initial SSID and no other isolation. So this is where like the security mindset starts coming in more. But yeah, I did mess up on that project a little bit. It was funny because I did all the routes correctly except for one. And, I went to my lead and said, hey, this thing's not working. And all I was missing was one route on one of the devices. And he had to remind me like, dude, you have to understand, like, every device, if it's a route, if you're in layer 3, if you're an IP address, every device in between needs to know the route one way or another. Every intersection needs to know the next way to turn, right? You can't just put it one place. Like now, like, of course, there's dynamic routing where you can share between devices, or you can do static. But the main point to understand is every single one, if you have 100 devices, they need to know. And I just missed it on one. So it makes you start thinking like, okay, really understand routing or where things are going. So that traffic was getting black holed, it ended up on one, I think, layer 3 switch, but there wasn't another route back to the firewall. So it will just get stuck. So I did that. That one really, again, shaped my mind of
Pretty
all the
interesting, man.
moving.
That sounds a little complicated, but at least you were able to get it, understand the fundamentals and
Yeah.
everything. Not the
Yeah.
fundamentals,
So
that's pretty advanced, but yeah, at least you
it was
understand.
actually pretty advanced, man. And on top of that, it was funny because, we had a lot of members on the team and different people were good at different things. We had one person good at wireless and like firewalls, one person good with F5 load balancers. And like, it was like everyone was good at 2 out of 5 things. And I would shadow all of them. So now I start shadowing them. I'm like, okay, what's an F5? Front end load balancer, does reverse proxy. You take an application, let's say you have 3 servers. This is before auto scaling cloud and all that, right? 3 servers, you front it with the virtual IP in the front. We land on the network, put our certificates on. But even that, when that front end IP routes to the backend servers, we still got to configure that. It just, people don't see it, it's just transparent. But now that I have a strong consensus of what routing is, really the whole OSI model at this point, but it was easy for me to grab what they're doing because I'm just adding layers on top. Like, okay, I need to have a self IP here. This is going to talk to this. Here's my VLANs. It's a reverse proxy. Do I want to do SSL offloading? So I got good with the F5s. I got good with the wireless. Got the time. Only one of the gals was working on network access control, so she needed a backup. So then network access control was like, what I mentioned earlier, what I did as a student intern, pretty much port security on steroids, that instead of you directly configuring on the network infrastructure, is the network infrastructure talks to a centralized radius server where you have all your policies and stuff. And that was one of the next projects I worked on, was making sure that things aren't just plugged in that shouldn't be there. So you have to configure the switch to talk to the radius server through encrypted keys based on your desktop supplicant. Supplicant's just like a configurable. It's not really like an agent. I mean, you could have an agent, but it's EAP, which is Extensible Authentication Protocol, I believe. It pretty much sends specific data to your radio server, and your radio server will respond. And at the time, all we were doing is saying, hey, if this is a corporate device, let them on the network. If they're not, kick them off. This is 2016, 2015. So did those things. Eventually, I got there's one more project I did, which was implementing a new DDI solution, which is DNS, DHCP, and IPAM, right? For multiple reasons. IPAM at the time was all done on spreadsheets. So like kind of putting that into some like centralized management, and just having new DHCP servers and stuff. So explaining DHCP really quick, like DHCP is usually just all layered. Your machine needs an IP address that's not static. Your PC will request it through broadcast, right? And then if your DHCP server is on the same network, it's going to get that broadcast and respond back. Now, one thing I had to learn is like, okay, well, if you have 500 VLANs, and this is bad practice anyways, like you're not going to have a DHCP server on every VLAN. How would that work? And what you really end up doing is something called a DHCP relay, which is layer 3, where because your layer 3 gateway, so the reason you have an IP gateway is if you're going outside of your network, that's where you're going to punt it, right? So if your PC or whatever is trying to hit a network that is not on, that's why you have default gateways. They punt it to the gateway, and the gateway is going to now know the next route. Just like, hey, punt it to the intersection, and it's going to know where to turn. So what you would do is wherever your gateway would live, and that gateway has to be configured somewhere, like on a switch or something, you would put a DHCP relay into your DHCP server. So you may have, again, like 500 VLANs. Let's just say you have 100 VLANs for your campus users, but you may only have 4 DHCP servers. So on each one, you had to add relays. When I configure stuff, how could I also make it like secure so not everyone can access it? Things like that, man. And again, I'm just hustling. I'm enjoying it. And I think 2 years later, we started working on software-defined networking, which was crazy for public sector at the time. At the time, like no one had really did it, even private sector. But I think we had a good squad, and I think we had the guts, the gall, the heart, and like for me, I'm confident. It's not confident like blind confidence. It's confident because you've done so many reps, and you've delivered over and over, right? So we started looking at software-defined networking. I guess one side note I would add, Efren, is what else added to the growth was like fires and troubleshooting. It's not everything's always project, and shit's gonna hit the fan every once in a while. You go troubleshoot, you figure stuff out. Sometimes you figure it out. So I was always in troubleshooting scenarios.
Yeah, you're right about that.
And like, like in the beginning, I used to be super nervous being on those calls with everyone, and it just through reps and reps. And first you get blamed. Everyone blames the network, which kind of drives you crazy at times. I won't lie to you. Everyone still does it, and like 95% of the time, it's not the network. Saying it's the network is like saying the whole freeway or the city's down. It's pretty obvious when it is. But because networking the guilty until proven innocent model, that's another reason you become the best. It's not just because you integrate with every team. You get blamed a lot. So by proxy, you end up learning about databases better than a database team. You learn servers better than the server team, you learn the cloud stuff better than the cloud team, because you have to prove your innocence. And that's kind of what happened with me growing. So yeah, at this point, we're looking at software-defined networking and also cloud. Cloud's also all layer 3. Technically there is a layer 2, but you don't see it. Only like Azure, AWS sees it. So that was a mind shift for me too, that it's strict routing. So you can have, let's say, 192, 168, 4.2, and 4.3. In a traditional network, that's layer 2, MAC address, frames, boom, boom. In the cloud, it's all routing. So as we're lifting and shifting stuff during that era where everyone, their grandma wants to go to the cloud for no reason or whatever they want to do it for, things don't work correctly. So again, coming with that challenge, okay, why does it not work correctly? You do your research, you learn, and it adds to your growth. You figure you have to configure stuff differently than on-prem. And that was a huge shift too. So doing that, and I think this is where I get the mastery at BGP routing, which I think is like one of my biggest fortes. Because one, the cloud always the cloud is external, and BGP is big for multiple reasons, because a lot of agencies and like, companies like Facebook, Google, they just use strict BGP just because the route manipulation and how it works and scalability, but also because of the cloud, there's a lot more BGP, and at this point, I'm doing routing over the internet. When you go to the internet, it's not like you just blend it and send it. You're gonna have internet routers. You can choose to just do a default route to the internet, or you can ingest all the tables. So like back then, I think in 2020, there was about 700,000 BGP routes. I don't even know what it's at now. So we were ingesting every route into our routers, which allows us to do route manipulation. So if I have 3 ISP circuits, let's say one's level 3, one's AT&T, one's Verizon, I can manipulate the routes to say, hey, if it's going to Google, send it out AT&T. If it's going to Facebook, send it out Verizon. If it's going to, I don't know, mylittlepony.com, send it to the level 3, whatever. Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah. So now we're taking the routing to a whole different level. Like I did EIGRP. EIGRP is more like, it's only interior gateway protocol. So like, yeah, for like interconnecting, your campus VLANs or even data center, yeah, it works fine. There's some manipulation you can do with it, but it's a lot more complex than BGP's manipulation. Maybe that's opinionated. A lot of people are afraid of BGP. But EIGRP is more distance vector, right? It looks at kind of 5 things like, bandwidth, latency, delay, these things. BGP is just by autonomous system, right? It's just path selection. And that's why, and on top of that, it's the only exterior gateway protocol out there. So if you're routing on the internet, you have to use BGP. But yeah, so now this is networking on steroids. Now I'm at a different level, different planet. We're taking on software-defined networking. We started learning software-defined networking, which is like VXLAN, but if you want to call it layer 2.5, but it's pretty much like layer 2 over IP. And the way that works is because you're abstracting the network into the software layer, and then ultimately in the underlay, it's just traditional networking, but whatever you're using is doing that for you, whether it's ACI or I forget VMware's NSX, and technically the cloud is doing that. So another challenge we had to learn, right? VXLAN, but the beauty is like more of a layer 2 stretch. You don't want to traditionally do layer 2 stretches like across like environments or different buildings, broadcast doors, those type of things. Take that on. This is where I learned automation as well, because now the centralized management and things like that, when I'm building networks, not only am I configuring to command line, I'm actually using Postman, learning the JSON of like, okay, if I build this network, what did I do in JSON? Okay, take that out, cut it out. Let me just make some edits, send it out. And we were able to clone networks and stuff like that. So we implemented that in 2019, and that's when I got promoted to like a senior engineer. And at the time, it was crazy because I just remember like Cisco telling us that there's a lot of companies doing it, but for like how advanced we had it for a public sector was crazy. I think it was like us in like a university, like in the Midwest somewhere, that had it that intense. So where it wasn't like we just plugged it in and said, yeah, we did it. Yeah, so I did that. Eventually, I would move on from that department for pretty much just for more pay, working for 2 reasons: for more pay, but also started working for like a utility district, like electrical stuff. So at this point, like, even though I knew I was good at what I did, I had a good security mindset, I had a good routing, networking backbone, desktop, the nature of the work you do may be executed differently based on the business you're working for or with, right? What's the nature of the business? And that's what I noticed. Like, yeah, I'd go there and set up routers, but now I'm not worried about like the HIPAA data or financial data. I'm worried about SIP compliance, right? So I always want more growth in my career, not just, the money or the learning. So I go there for 2 years, a blast setting some stuff up. But this is during COVID now. So now it's like 2020, kind of an odd time. I show up. I was helping them scale their remote force. I guess one step back, I forgot to mention, was I did implement like remote work for the whole agency I was at back in 2019. It was a hard sell at the time. Only IT admins had VPN access, and I kind of told, me and the other leads kind of told the higher ups that, hey, if we want to compete with private, we have to give our customers, our business partners, more access so they have more, reason to work there. And simply put, right? Because they're getting offered more private. Why would they stay? So if they have the luxury of working remotely, so I did that there. Go to utility district, did the same thing for them. I was prepared for that. Set up a new BGP tunnel for them, new routing to them for their, their electrical partners. And then eventually I got an offer back in my old agency to come back as a principal network engineer, network architect. And same thing, again, I took a lot less money. Again, it wasn't about the money, it was about the reputation, the title, my growth, my learning. So I come back doing that, working on more advanced projects, pretty much like network access control over software defined networking for the campus. So when I say campus, it means like end devices and endpoints, like PCs, laptops, the printers, those type of things. When I say data center, that means application servers, that type of infrastructure. So it's the same logic, but you're applying to the more desktop role. And in order for that project to be successful, we needed good buy-in and understanding from the networking teams, the security teams, and the desktop teams for sure. And I was the only guy who did all those three things, so I can visualize well. And I knew for that project to be successful, it was only my team. So I would design everything out, and I would even have sessions with my old desktop teams. Like, hey, what do you guys not understand? I want you to understand the whole piece of the puzzle and then where your piece fits and how can I really help you get there? And I would have these sessions with them, once a week, whenever they can call me. Eventually everyone gets on the same board. We implement that project. This is March 2023. In the first deployment I did, it had like a 99.9%, 95% success rate. I think out of like, I can't remember how many devices. There were just 2 Xerox printers that didn't work, and it was kind of like a bug thing. But on top of that, yeah, it was super successful. But the reason why was because everyone was on the same page. So that rocked.
Especially when doing
Yeah,
deployments, man, we got to work with everybody. We do a lot of deployments. You got to work with the network teams, cyber teams, application
yeah.
teams.
I
There's
got
so many
I
teams that you don't even know what names they are anymore. But yeah,
Yeah, I'll show you some diagrams one day because me, I diagram really well, I whiteboard really well, and I use a lot of analogy type of bridges and stuff. So when the desktop team really wasn't understanding it, I would break things down like, hey, like when you have a supplicant on your PC, that's almost like your ID card or license, right? Then, it's just like going to a club or a bar, whatever. You present your ID card, that's kind of like the radius server. It's like, hey, this bouncer is going to cross-reference you against AD and see if you're 21 over. Boom, you're 21 over. Okay, what policy you get? Okay, you can go here, here. Okay, you have a wristband on, you can hit VIP. So then they started understanding why people have regular access, privileged access, what the purpose is, why it's secure, why it's better. And it really took those things to help them visualize. I was going to help them visualize. That was my thing. A lot of people are not initially visual.
yeah,
It's
you're very true, man. You can the way you visualize stuff, man. It's insane, man. I give you props on that. Definitely give you
yeah,
props, and the one that the architect and everything you do, those designs, dude, that's talent right there, man. And especially the way you explain things, man, is great.
yeah.
I
And
mean,
listen, friend, that's like a skill that's sought after.
that's a huge skill that nobody even knows about it, and that's something that like you got that.
I don't know if I'm blessed from my parents or what, but like when I was even in high school and stuff, like usually they say you're a math person or art writing. I was a little bit of both, like left brain, right brain. What I notice is as an engineer, it's more rational thinking, linear thinking, right? It's the end of the equation. When you're an architect, it's more the beginning of the equation, like your creativity. So when I went to the architecture role, I was using more the other side of my brain. It's really my design side. Even when I make diagrams, I use art principles and stuff like that I learned in art classes. So I think that really came into play and it kind of helped visualizing. But yeah, man, just mentoring them. And I used to meet with my team once a week. I was I guess like a level 3 because I was an architect and senior engineers a 2. Then we would have journey engineers like a 1, and then we had some like analysts and some technicians. And I would hold these forums where like anybody can pop in at any time. They can ask me like really any question. I'm going to help them get to where they need to be. And we do whiteboarding, and it wasn't always whiteboarding. I'm going to figure out the best path for you to learn. Some people learn from whiteboarding. Some people may just have to log in with you and configure with you. Like they're my team. I'm going to help them level up because one, it's good for them and for me selfishly, right? The better they can do, the better we can all execute. I found like a weird passion in doing that more than anything. Like I still like doing the work. That was fun, but like just the mentoring was fun. And I was mentored before too, and now I am one, right? And just seeing people grow from it and actually gravitate towards you and learn from it, I just thought it was the dopest dope ever. So that's why, nowadays, yeah, I still consult, I still do stuff, but I like working with anybody, any age, learning new skills. I work with my niece right now. She's like, how old is she? 16, 17. We'll jump on packet trace, we'll do things. And, now she knows how good I am. Before she's like, oh, Devin Uncle works on, PCs and configures PCs. Now she starts seeing the crazy stuff, and I joke with her, you know, if you stick with me, you'll be 10 times better than me, you know, always. But
Very true, man. The mentee sometimes even get smarter than the mentor, man. So I could
yeah,
definitely see
and
that.
that's I want them to be better than me, you know, whoever it is. But yeah, and it's a beauty, like, and just paying it forward, man. You know, but for every crappy one, there's some great ones, and you have to focus your energy on them. I was blessed; I had great ones. You know, not just on my team, man. I remember like when I was first scripting and doing stuff like that. I knew like the Linux team was really good at it. I was running a Linux shell script, and I'm googling. What I was doing was I was taking like a API call and I was stripping a state off it, and I wanted to re-inject it into another script. And I'm Googling, and, you know, Google gives me like 5 different ways of doing it. And I reach out to one of the Linux guys, and I'm like, can you help me? Can you show me what these 4 things mean? And he gave me each scenario, what the benefit, pros, cons were, and how that would result in the script. Point being, like, take advantage of your mentors, man. If they're out there, just take advantage. Go ask them. It's not going to hurt. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
like,
definitely something that people should be looking into is getting a mentor. I know some people get the ego of like, oh, I don't need a mentor. I can just go to school, get my bachelor's or get my certifications. But honestly,
right.
man, I've noticed that even from the top, the highest of the highest has a mentor, man. That billionaire that you look up to, that engineer you look up to, they have a mentor for somewhere else. So it's good to look into it.
Yeah, and no matter like how good you are, you more than likely are gonna be better with a mentor. So like even and you that's one thing I saw that friend it was crazy because again I became like a position level like the 3rd tier. And I would see some people that get trapped in the 1 or the 2 tier, and those people not always were they sealing themselves like, oh, I know everything already. Yeah,
That's exactly, man. I see
yeah.
that all the time, man. And as always, in the 1 or 2 levels that they say, "Oh, I know everything. I shouldn't
Yeah,
be
and I
growing no
don't have nothing
more.
to
I already
learn,
do."
right?
Yeah,
Like,
and it's a sad thing, man. That they think like that. They have that ego, but they
I
start
yeah.
until they meet someone else that they're higher than them, and that's when they get intimidated and they get all puffed up.
Yeah, like for me, I still have the same hunger I had as a 14-year-old kid. Like, there's no ceilings in this game, and like true wisdom is accepting that you know nothing. You know, if you can do that, then you can ascend. And but yeah, so like this is still the career, and then you know after that, like I still enjoyed the work. I liked working with my team, but it's not like I mastered everything because again, you can't. But I knew my career was headed elsewhere, like where logically I've done the same projects over and over. And again, this is where IT was shifting a lot, where there's a lot more projects happening. It was getting more aggressive. I've done a lot of it. So I'm like, you know, I want to get into something else. I want to go, you know, fully into cyber, start consulting and stuff like that. You know, just have the next challenge. Cause like for me, I always need to be like, challenge, you know, like what's going to push me to the next level. And I wanted to learn how to consult. I wanted to be better at mentoring, but I also wanted to get my cyber certs and go back into that area. And it went full circle. Took off from there. Started
Oh yeah,
my
for
own.
everybody that doesn't know, what type of search do you have, man? I'm
Oh
taking right
man.
now, but what search do you have so far?
So I have currently that are active. I just have
The
3
same
certs.
thing. The ISC2, ISC square. They call them the
50.
same thing.
Yeah, I have for the first one I got, and I got all 3 certs within a matter of like less than a year. But first one I got was System Security Certified Practitioner, which is kind of like the middle cert. It's more focused on like infrastructure security. So like, you know, firewalling, I don't know, endpoint security, server security, you know, that type of stuff. And what's funny is when I took that cert, I knew I had a good chance of passing it because that's the work I did for like 10, 12 years now. But the reason I took it was I really wanted my certified information security professional, CISSP, but because I hadn't taken an exam in like 10 years, I used that first test as like a prep for me. Not just the exam, but like what's it going to be like walking into this room? You got to remember, last time I took an exam, it's on Scantrons, my friend. It wasn't on the computer. So yeah, that's how it was.
Even though
Yeah,
we're not
dude.
that old, but still, that I think we came in the prime time, man. We came in where we're like in the middle of the transition of technology, and also still we still
The
have that old
extension.
school style. Yeah,
The generation before us didn't really tech at all. The generation kind of after us, unfortunately, has had everything built for them. It's like they have the Teslas, it just works. The
yeah,
generation before us had more of the carburetor cars. We saw from carburetor to fuel injection to the Teslas. We saw the full ascension. You
yeah.
know,
And it's awesome, man, because we've seen the transition going on. It's crazy. Yeah, keep going, man.
yeah. So I got my SSCP, and then I was gonna go for my CISSP next, and I was looking at ISC2, and I think at the time the CCSP just came out, which is Certified Cloud Security Professional. It was out for 2 years. And I'm looking at the ISC2 site, and I can't remember the numbers. You know, the amount of people that have the CCSP at the time was, I think it was like 800 to 2,000. It was like nobody. It's like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this one next. And when I paid for it, I did the ISC2 Peace of Mind voucher where I get to take 2 tests for just an extra $200, because this is not a professional exam. It's not practitioner. This is going to be more like managerial, situational decision making. Actually, we'll find out. To me, this was the hardest test. I think it was a hybrid of both because this cloud's still kind of new. So I study like crazy. I always do like 1,500 practice questions. I watch YouTube videos, watch the Mike Chappelle stuff on LinkedIn, read Luke Ahmed's Think Like a Manager. I think it's one of the best books you can get out there if you're studying for.
I see you always commenting his posts and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
you even got me interested in that guy, man. That guy looks pretty cool.
he's a great resource. Even him, I believe he's a network security engineer, and he's one of the best CISSP authors out there. So I study for that one. Here's what I did, Efren. I aggressively studied for 12 weeks while knowing that I had 2 vouchers. So I go in there, take the exam. The first time I failed it, you know, and I was kind of a little booty tickling buttered about it, like, oh man. But I knew, I was like, why don't I just do this? Because there's no other better practice exam than the exam itself. And when you fail one of those, they give you the results back on what areas you struggled in. And I only really struggled in one area, which is more the legal laws, like when you go overseas and that type of stuff. I killed the architecture. I killed all the infrastructure. That was the only thing, because it does get a little bit weird with the cloud and where your data lives. If it's in, you know, Europe, you have the GDPR stuff. US has different stuff. So I'm like, okay, I need to aggressively study that. So I studied that for another 8 weeks, end up passing, get that one. Next thing on the table is the CISSP, which is pretty much ISC2's, I guess, highest cert. I think there's 3 higher tiers of that, but for whatever, all intents and purposes, that's their kind of bread and butter cert. And a Peace of Mind voucher, I think it ended up being like $1,000 for 2 exams, but I ended up passing that one on the first time. And it was to me, it was easier than the cloud one, because like I say, the CISSP is straight situational decision making as a manager, right? Even if you think something's the best answer, you have to look at things from like a financial standpoint. You know, if you may have an answer that like, hey, I'm gonna implement 50 firewalls and 50 whatever tunnels and do all this type of stuff. But if that costs so much money, your business goes out of business, then there's no business, there's nothing to protect. So it's probably the wrong answer. So that's a kind of hint for you.
The funny thing, man, that I know directors and directors, managers, and everybody isn't already in the upper level that should already be having the CISSP. They always tell me, it's like, man, I failed it. This is my 3rd time trying it out, and I haven't passed it. And it's funny because they're in the industry already in management, and they still can't pass it.
You can pass by luck, and sometimes not being in the industry, you may just kind of like not overthink it. But for me, I mean, yeah, I aggressively studied and I did it, but I also had so much situational experience already. That's really where it comes from. You know, I've already been in all those scenarios, so I can visualize the questions in my head exactly. But yeah, I felt like the first one I took, this SSCP, is more just technical security. The CISSP is managerial type of decision making, and the CCSP was a hybrid of both, because you need to know like cloud infrastructure architecture on top of the laws. And yeah, I got those 3, and now I'm considering going for my CCNP again, and you know, advanced routing and switching, because that's one of my skills. The certs kind of add up in cost, but I know I can do it if I want to. But yeah, those are the certs I have, and now what I do more now is consult more, not just I kind of oversee both the cyber and networking sides. That's one thing I did. A lot of agencies would bring the cybersecurity and networking teams together so they were fluid. Then they can, and once you have a healthy relationship, you can execute way better. So I'm implementing more things like zero trust architecture. So on top of having your normal infrastructure security and things like that, you have more of like a identity access management is like really important for this. So like, you know, the roles have changed in the past 15 years. Instead of going host to host, like this house can talk to this house, it's really not house to house or company to company, it's effort to the service, right? So the goal is, how do you ensure that you have a least privilege model for the actual identity to the service? And that's another layer on top. Obviously it's helpful in today's world, but it's very, very complex, right? Whatever looks at the surface more simple for the end users means the underlay is way more complex. So there's way more moving pieces. And that's kind of the irony of IT right now. It's that as much as these things come out, and theoretically, even when the cloud boom happened, like, oh, I need less network engineers, I need less server engineers. Cloud made everything way more complex. Nobody's went to the cloud solely. Now, instead of having 2 on-prem data centers, we have 3 on-prem data centers, 3 clouds, da, da, da. So now those teams need to think differently and manage those things, right? Not only do you have traditional third-tier servers, you have things like containers and, whatever else ways. So to me, IT has gotten a lot more, way more complex in the past like 10 years.
And I do agree on that. It's getting more complex every year. Not every year, it's like every few months, man.
Every
How
few months
technology
and
is.
getting aggressive and with less
Yeah,
staff. Right now it seems like it's better to be the driver of the car than the mechanic. It's weird. Like you'll implement like a cloud or an AI type of integration so other people can use it, but then you get so busy building and integrate that you can't even use it. So it's like, kind of ironic a little bit, but yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And that's my long-winded answer for you. Plus, it's been like over an hour 15 of like what got me interested in IT and why I did it. Again, short answer was originally it was just pay my bills, do stuff. I had interest in it. I never thought I'd make it a career, to be honest. But as I started ascending, I was able to get my house out of it. I did have one hard decision though when I was an analyst because I was in school at the time. I was going to transfer to a 4-year. I was doing electrical engineering, and all the classes I would have taken were going to be like 1 or 2 classes a week around noon. So if I was going to work, I had to work part-time. So I'm going to be making less money. And then on top of that, when you pay for a part-time school, you really pay like 70-80% of full tuition. And I'm like, I'm going to go broke doing this. So I had the hard decision of like not finishing the school. I decided not to do that and just focus on the work. And after my next promotion, I pretty much was making what the bachelor's degree would give me anyways. And that's why I was able to get my house. I think I was like 24 years old and keep climbing.
yeah, man. You started pretty young, man. I do remember from the time that I heard that you were 19 and everything, man. That's definitely an admiration, man. I was like, oh man, I want to be like that guy one day. So
Yeah.
I kept hearing you because well, we know we have a mutual friend named Kyle. So we pretty much we met up and he would tell me about you. Oh, he's in networking. He's working for
Yeah.
the first time I heard that you were networking. You were working at our desktop. That you were working for the our school district.
Yeah. I
So
was
that's when I was
17.
like, yeah. So I was like, oh, that's pretty awesome, man. That he's working for the school district. So I was interested of working in there. Then I heard that you went for the state, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool that you went to the state. Then I heard
Yeah.
that you're working for a utility company, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, man. That's something for sure I never thought about.
I missed one, man. I don't know how I missed this one because when I came down to SoCal, like, I was working in healthcare. And honestly, like, this is just my opinion. I don't prefer the healthcare stuff as much because HIPAA data is kind of hard to deal with. But again, I did that on purpose because I dealt with HIPAA data, but not at that scale, right? So, okay, I've done retirement, investments, benefits, some HIPAA. Now I've done SIP. Now I've done HIPAA on top. So then you can put that on your resume or whatever, like, because you execute differently. Like, I'm gonna execute way differently for a hospital than I will for utility versus an investment fintech company is the truth. Even though the logic and concepts are the same. You can't just copy pasta. That's my fake Italian for copy paste. The same design over. Your design's gonna shift. So again, it's gonna be challenges me to do a different design for the spots. And then once I kind of have the level of mastery over that, it's like, okay, now I can kind of go up on my own. You're not only helping big enterprises, but even small businesses. So that's kind of the fun part. So yeah, even Kyle, man, was funny is like, he started me networking doing stuff and he was just doing desktop at the time. And I kind of tell him about like, not just the technical challenges, but, political challenges, stuff like that. And he took the same CCNA courses that I did at Sac City and that kind of leveled up his career. The once he started working full time for like larger shops, then he kind of started visualizing everything I was saying. He's like, man, you were right. There's like, sometimes the challenges is like, it has nothing to do technical. It's all the work you have to do to finally do your work.
I forgot that he was in networking, huh? He was for a smaller company. Now he's in a bigger company doing something else. But yeah, I completely forgot that he was in a networking aspect for a little bit. Yeah, that changed a lot. So that means a lot too. But what do you think about the whole HIPAA and PCI and everything? What do you think about all that stuff? Understanding
Mm-hmm.
that, do you think understanding the fundamentals is good to have at least, or at least know the industry that you're mainly looking for?
I think when you have a balance of practical knowledge and applied knowledge, it would help. So even if you learn, let's say those 3 things and let's say PCI, DSS, whatever, but your company doesn't do that, it's good to have a high level idea of what it is, but you're going to understand better where you're at. right? You understand, like, okay, and just go ask people. Like, one thing you can do, and I used to do this all the time, is reverse engineer everything. That's the way you learn too, right? So you look at, okay, what are the core services or applications this company is using internally and externally, my external customers and my internal customers. And then look at, okay, where does this app live? This is where routing comes in hot and stuff like that. Okay, where does this app live? What database talk to? Okay, why is the database protected? Okay, what type of data is in there? And that's going to help you understand with who currently designed and secured it, why it's like that. So I think those things help. But like the main thing is the applied knowledge, the hunger, taking on projects and not being afraid. I mean, if you do those things, because practical knowledge is practical knowledge. Sometimes people just say words, so like, but yeah, man, that's like the high level thought.
That's pretty cool, man. From all the industries, man, which one did you like the most? I know you just
To me, it's more fintech, and it's not so much about the securing the data. It's because those companies have money. And what I mean by that is a lot of times healthcare is kind of the legacy days, but you see a lot of shops that they want to implement a project, and funding wise or policy wise, procurement wise, whatever legacy world they're living in, you realize, hey, I can't get all this gear in 1 year. It may take 3 or 4 years to get all this gear, right? So then you've kind of Frankenstein stuff together. This is one of the biggest challenge people like IT admins face right now. It's like, it's not just one clean greenfield. Greenfield, by the way, means like a net new, building a house from scratch. Brownfield means more like a migration, like you're renovating a house. So it's more like brownfield migrations, right? And then maintaining that while parallel projects happen. With something like fintech, they may have the bread and they may have the whatever, the gall or acceleration to get to that next level. So not just securing the data is your ability to implement projects. Yeah, I know that sounds like bluntly whatever, like they got more money or whatever, but it's the truth. It's like, why do you think the Wi-Fi at hotels and in hospitals always sucks? It's because they're 24/7 shops, right? If somebody's like, hey, like, they don't always suck, but more times than not, they're more legacy. I look at every hospital, every hotel, it's because if somebody came out and said, hey, we have to do a hard change on the Wi-Fi, we'll do it this week. Well, they always have customers there. If you're a customer at the hotel, you'll be like, hey, do it next week when I'm gone. Well, then someone else is there. So for me, like, I like the fintech side, and then, because they're making the financial money, and you can, on top of that, you can get mentored by those guys too. I mean, as long as there's no like small conflict of interest, but just learning concepts. Like I learned a lot with the financial guys, just how finances work, which I apply to my own like normal life. Right. So yeah, I like, so far that's what it's been for me, where with what I would prefer. Ultimately what matters is that it's not so much what you do, it's who you work with. So as long as the team is strong, you get along with people, you have good culture, just like sports, man. The locker room's good, you can execute.
so what do you think about people that trying to jump around to different roles? I know you jumped around in different roles. Do you think in different industries, you think it's worth it, or is it good just to stay in one industry?
I think the main thing is trying to understand why you're doing it, right? So like if your goal is to have a well-rounded, clear understanding of IT, and you feel that, hey, maybe I jump a different role so I can understand this, it can help you. But there's pros and cons, right? Because let's say you're like you're an application web dev guy and you know a little bit about databases, you connect them all that, but you really haven't like managed databases or servers. Like, okay, I want to go into that realm to understand that part better, or security or whatever. If you jump, maybe your only opportunity is jumping ship to do that. Now you can understand that practically better, but you're gonna have to relearn how your apps and services work at those places, right? If you stay at the same place, maybe it'll be a little bit easier to stitch because you understand 70% of it, just not that 30. So there's pros and cons of both. I don't think any path is wrong. It's just what you're trying to achieve, like knowledge wise. If you're just chasing the bucks, then I mean, yeah, to each their own, right? But if it's for your growth, having an understanding, maybe, yeah, you want to go into cloud. You never been in the cloud before. Your current spot has no cloud positions. You have to make that leap so you can get directly into working with that. But it may take you time to understand how that business operates and what their IT functions are, going from practical to applied. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. To me, I mean, not every template is the same, but the best of the best that I've always seen have followed the same high level path, which has been like help desk, desktop, tier 3 groups, and then maybe management later. And most of them doing networking. Because I remember working with a gentleman who was doing our desktop scripting and pushing out applications and stuff like that. And just like me, he used to work on cars and stuff. And the conversation he had one time with me like really stuck. He was like, the best people in IT almost never want to get into IT. We're already analytical, and this is just our playground to keep being analytical. Like, oh, that guy used to work on cars.
That's so
Yeah.
true. That's
And
so
and then you see so many other positions come up, like business liaison positions that are just like in the middle of IT and the business. But if you're not technical, how could you stitch that? That's always been baffling for me. And it's like they don't always have that infrastructure or hardware component. It's more just like, hey, the business needs this. Can you implement it? And it's like, it's like playing telephone game. If they can't speak the same tongue, there may be some removal of what was initially said or wanted. That's why for me personally, again, this is where the desktop side comes in. When I was a network engineer and I had a firewall project and I knew all the finance people, when we were first implementing new firewalls, they were very afraid. As soon as they found out I was the person working on it, they instantly approved it. Why? Because like the relationship and like the trust and those type of things, right? So, and that comes from me just literally walking up to them and really taking the middleman out and saying, what do you guys want? What are you struggling with? What doesn't really work right now? What could be better? And they tell me in normal terms, and I'm technical now, I'm going to build that into some type of solution that's going to work for them. And that's the other
yeah.
thing. We don't
That's a good way. That's a really good way to look at it too.
just
Pretty much
ask them.
you're pretty much translating, man. You're
Yeah.
a translator. You're a technical translator and a simple translator.
Because sometimes, IT and a lot of business, like it's a trickle down effect, right? Maybe there was a legacy application 20 years ago. IT's role is to patch it, do this. And then next year, IT's like, hey, we're going to bump this application to the cloud or do whatever. I was working on a project like that one time. And for the customers it was for, we went to them like, hey, it's done. How do you guys feel about this? And they're like, hey, we like it, but we only use that application like twice a year. Right. So it wasn't like what they were doing 20 years ago, but no one in IT management ever asked them that. They were just weighing their lives out in coffee spoons, just rinsing, repeating on the same route. Well, no one went back and asked them. And all that department wanted was like new printers and like new TVs or something that you use every day. So sometimes the most complex solution isn't the best fix. And the best way to find out is just ask them. Like that's it.
Yeah, that is something about IT, man. There's so many layers that it gets complicated or it gets lost in the middle because there's so many people that has to be involved.
Too many cooks in the kitchen, man.
Yeah.
Don't get lost in the sauce, man. Don't get lost in the sauce. And that's what it becomes. And then it becomes just like a pissing match of like, putting the most shiny thing in the environment versus doing what's best for the business. And for me, like all I care about are the business partners and the business can run. That's it. Even for me, one thing is I never said anyone that works for the same company is a customer. They're not. The customers are the external customers, right? They're my business partners. We're trying to do right for the people paying their electricity bill. And when you do have that mindset, then you link up and you're on the same path forward. Because once you have a customer service model, sometimes it gets one-sided very quick. I've seen some agencies where people are literally afraid of IT and they'll just do whatever you want. And I've seen some where they dominate IT and IT is like servants to them. I hate to use that word, but that's what it feels like. So when you have a legit partnership, you have to understand the mission of the business and you can do right for the business because the business needs to operate.
And that's a really good mindset because people think like, oh, they're users. They're pretty much just see them as like a pretty much. It's hard to say, but they look at them as like garbage or just a random user, random person. Instead of
Yeah,
saying, you know what, that's my son. Yeah, he might be in different departments or we might be in different things, but we're a team. We're here as a business partner. We're here to try to accomplish one thing, and that's making the business go forward.
because once it's ironic if you sometimes treat them as your customer and it gets one-sided, then you may make the wrong decision or wrong decisions are implemented, and that actually hurts the actual customer. I remember doing some updates one time and I had to push something out, and so many different departments, just one person wanted to work the weekend at a shop with 5,000 people. So they pushed my project back, and they just pushed back. The actual customer service suffers, which is about 30,000 people, because now they have to wait an extra week. So it's sometimes you got to back up and think about things like that.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good way to look at it. I know you also mentioned a while back. We
Hmm.
haven't you haven't mentioned it here, but I know you mentioned that you worked in the restaurants and everything else, and that builds up your skill sets, your communication skills.
100%.
So what do you think about that? Can you give me a little bit more story about that, a little story, the backstory of that, and how
Yeah,
that all that stuff was merged into what you are right now?
I mean, because working in service industry, restaurants and stuff, one, your hours are going to be crazy. You're not going to have an 8 to 5. If you're working service industry, you're working weekends. The main thing you learn is like,
Yeah,
okay, if you're on a help desk, you get a call and sometimes you have a frustrated customer. Shit happens, whatever. You can take a little breather, you're in air conditioning, you take a 5 minute break, boom, get another call. When you're in the service industry, yeah, if you have like some rude customer or whatever, there can be somebody behind them. You have to get your act together quick and not make sure your emotions get to you because that next customer doesn't deserve it, right?
very true.
And you're going to cross people of all walks of life, right? Because everyone eats. So like, and what's funny is one of the guys I met at one of the restaurants is who helped me apply for my student intern jobs because he was doing that and I had no idea how to do it. So if I wasn't doing that, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at. But it's the communication, the constant communication with people. And I was just very, because I was, me in high school, like I was more stoic. I'm still pretty stoic. I didn't really talk a lot though. I just kind of kept to myself, just did my thing, da da da. But when I went through that, my communication skills, became really rock solid, working for restaurant stuff for like 4 or 5 years. One of my best friends talks about that. She's in IT now and she used to, work for like Chili's. And it was the same thing when we saw us both get promoted. It was like, why? And all the kids who got grandfathered in working directly like in IT, they struggled with that.
You know what, man? You're 100% right on that, man. Because
Yeah.
I remember I used to work in a restaurant too, dishwasher and everything. And dude, when I left my first IT job, I was super excited. It was like, man, I'm in the AC. I'm not rushed. I got nobody screaming at me.
Same
And
schedule.
yeah, I got my set schedule too. And the other people that, like you just said, they got inherited with IT. They were like, oh, I hate this because I got to deal with customers. I got to deal with that. I was like, dude, I'm
Yeah.
loving it.
Good.
And like
Good.
out there in the restaurant, I was getting yelled at 20 times a day.
You got to get it together,
Yeah.
and, it's just like, I miss it at times, I see people, working those jobs, I got a couple buddies out down here that do that and bartenders or whatever. And you just see all walks of life, it's good to get outside a little bit. Remember, there's some extra world out there outside your tech stuff. But yeah, and that's why I excelled in desktop, even like just going to talk to people. I was never afraid. And here's the funny difference. So when I worked for the school district, remember all the schools, we had 9 elementary schools or whatever. Even though we had at the time, I don't know if it was Windows or what, like some level of remote assistance, the rule was you couldn't use any type of remote assistance unless you met with a teacher or faculty staff like 3 times in person. Granted, it wasn't an emergency. If it was an emergency, you can do it. But the point of that was to build some level of customer relation and trust. And I had the same model moving forward.
That's something I'm gonna definitely add in my blueprint.
Yeah, because and it's funny because once I started working for larger agencies, I would have cats on different teams that, oh, I don't want to go meet this person, so I'm still remote in, that I do my thing. Yeah, it's fixed, but I would walk to somebody's desk and and obviously they're stressed, right? It's not like they're mad at you. They're frustrated, not at you. They're frustrated because they can't do their job. So you have to kind of empathize with that. Empathy is the ultimate bridge. So like, I would go there understanding that, and maybe like on their wall, I see like a Raiders sign, and I'm a Niner fan. So I'm gonna start talking a little bit smack. I'm gonna try to get them distracted a little bit of what they're going through. Meanwhile, we're chopping it up, doing stuff. I'm figuring out the issues. The issue is, and the next thing you know, it's fixed. And then once we're done talking, like, what? Like, what happened here? And then let's say a week, 2 weeks later, I'm walking the cafe, they see you, they say hi. So now you have that customer relation build. You can hit them up on Skype, like, talk to them, and the trust is there. So I think that's, very important. Like I always say, like, if you want to be a good architect, and I always think in threes, never twos, what I mean by that, it's not like yes or no or black or white. There's always shades of gray. Is there has to be 3 things for balance, right? And the 3 key things for me is 1, visualization, right? Not just saying you're a visual learner. Now you have to be the guy creating the visuals. So visualization, empathy, and technical skill set. The empathy is what's going to stitch that bridge. And it's going to allow you to really ask the customer what they really want or need, right?
Man, that's really good, man. I never like there's the same words that I follow through, but I never put it all like in one. I never had a blueprint or something to
What's your reverse
put it
engineering?
together.
Yeah, you're probably
Yeah,
doing it already, right? Because those are things sometimes you do for a long time, but once you actually categorize
yeah.
it, and that's what I started doing. Like, I always want at least 3 things. For me, for technical implementation, it's architecture, engineering, operation, right? Design the boat, build the boat, keep it afloat. That's the 3. And then before that comes like kind of strategy, design, and initially talk with the customer. But those are kind of like, and it's a triangle now. It's not a ladder. It's a triangle because it's rapid innovation. So things no longer just stay in maintenance operations. things advance quickly. So they go back to architecture, then get engineered again. They operate for a little bit, then back to architecture. It's a triangle. It's an ongoing triangle.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. Now I see why you passed the CISSP pretty quick, man. That's
Yeah,
yeah, the way you strategize and the way that you visualize things, and
you
that
need
makes a
to.
lot of sense. Why you're so good at a network architect because you can visualize things, you can categorize
Mhm.
things, you can
Yeah.
you can find subjects out of it.
And again, that comes from reps, right? Like in the beginning, maybe you can't visualize, but if you look at enough visuals over time and implement stuff, what's going to happen over time is you're going to visualize in your head. In the beginning, you're not a chef. You're just following recipes. You keep cooking, you learn fundamental skills, like even simple stuff. How do I use a knife? Right? Then over time, you're like, okay, I want to make this dish. Now you're designing to a degree. Okay, what moving pieces need to work from an engineering level for me to make this happen? So now you've gone from like cook to chef, right? But it comes with everyone learns differently. Like some people have a natural, there's gifts and there's talents. Sometimes God gives you some gifts, but like at the same time, like no matter like whatever your floor or ceiling, you're always gonna be better with more reps.
That's true because, like you just said about the reps, that's something you'll need to do no matter what. It doesn't matter how smart you are or how not knowledgeable you are. In the end, those reps are the ones that it's the biggest key points to get you to learn really to understand the fundamental and to master it. Just because
Yeah,
I personally was never good at school. I was more of, if anything, I was like a straight D or F kid. I didn't really care, man. To be honest, in high school, man, I was like, I don't care for this, man.
I was kind of like the B kid because I could have been an A kid, but like you didn't care as much. But I was naturally good at some things. I rode that for a bit, and then I was kind of like, okay, no, you got to be reps. And for me, like a lot, like growing up, Kobe Bryant was my favorite player still today. And you look at the best of the best sports guys, like no matter what God gave them, Steph Curry, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Joe Montana, Tom Brady, whoever, why are they the best? Reps, like the work
Yeah,
they put in.
that's true. It's just
No ceilings in the game. So it's like those are the three, and you'll see as I'm working because on this, on top of the tech stuff, I'm working on my branding, a few other things. Is a big part of that is three-headed dragon system I use, which really comes down to your ambition, which is you have to be passionate about something, your rationale, which is more the engineering, linear thinking, and your creativity, which is more like the dynamic thinking. If you can stitch all those three things together, for me, I've used that system since I was like 19 years old. For anything, working on cars, building
dude,
networks,
that's
going to,
awesome, man. Now
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah, and yeah, if you really want to know what the 127 is, so the 127, so in networking, 127.0.0.1 is a self-address, right? So in the same way that, like Efren, you can be on 100 Front Street, you can be at 200 B Street, right? But you're still Efren, you're still yourself. And you kind of learn that it's not a journey upward or outward, it's always a journey inward. So kind of you don't lose yourself to it, stitch yourself in it, and that's why the 127's there. That's probably the first time I actually announced that, like straight up. And
Yeah, and I've been curious about this because you mentioned you launched this business about a year and a half around there. We reconnected on LinkedIn, and that's what we got back together and talking and conversating about all this stuff. So about a year and a half, man, I've been curious about that.
and there's different actual other pieces that are coming. Like I'm, making some like you'll see. I won't get too deep into it. 'Cause I'm good on the art side, like actual visual representations of that underneath a different brand. That's just the parent brand, and a couple other things I'm working on, like ebooks and stuff like that, for not just fictional writing, which I do on the side, but also like even technical writing, or if people want to get into IT, and it's like not just the technical ability, but having that mindset, right? That's kind of what is the ultimate to me, like the driver and the heart of the whole thing. The heart, soul, and the mind. Again, threes. They all have to work together. So, but yeah, that's why I started creating that because I did have some people follow my logic, or I'd work with them one-on-one for years, and I would kind of explain that to them, and they would take that approach, and they found themselves. You want to call it successful? I guess you can call it successful what they did. But again, they had to. My goal is to like help people build their own art, not just follow mine.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that is true, man. You got to build your own art. You got to figure it out yourself.
Hmm.
And that's something that we talked about too before. It was like, man, I had to find myself. I had to reverse engineer myself.
Yeah,
We had
they had to
to,
do, and that's
yeah,
when I
we
made
had
the
to go back and
127.
understand like what
Yeah,
was going on.
yeah, because funny, because that's when I made the whole 127. Because what was happening, this is real, is my system already always worked, but my system was getting used and abused for other people because they knew how I can execute. And I'm like, okay, my system's going haywire. I thought I knew how the system worked so well for so many years. Why is it going haywire? And I just understood I wasn't doing it for myself anymore. It's all for others. And just reverse engineering myself, destination is the path. So I had to add the 127 in there. Go inward, figure yourself out, and you can if you can stitch all those things, you'll unlock the doors inside yourself you never knew existed. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because it's you'll be a little bit surprised, man. And with just reverse engineering yourself, man, you can understand like what's really going on and what's that motivation, what's inspiration, and what's that like. At first, I've always
hmm
looked at it. It was like, okay, man, what do I really want to be? Do I really want to be in technical? Do I really want to be in cyber? Do I want to be in management? Do I want to be in business? So that's something I've always been kind of brain scattered all my life. So I'll be like, but
hmm
in the end, I figured out. I was like, look, my potential, my main goal is business. Second of all, is business. Second of all, branding and just expanding myself, just understanding more of the business side in
right.
cybersecurity and IT. So the IT is more of the creativity for me. The IT and cybersecurity is more the creativity, investigation, researching. But my main thing has always been business.
Yeah, you kind of find
I've
your
always,
part again.
yeah,
So and it's
because I was
here, right?
scattered all over the place, man.
Yeah, you're all going weird, all bunkers and everything. And it's
Yeah,
sometimes you gotta breathe a little bit, let the system cool down. Your processor can't operate at 200%. And the same way you can't floor your car everywhere. You had to make a turn. You got to hit the brakes a little bit, calm down. You know, do some maintenance, move on. And again, it's not
yeah,
linear. It's not linear. Yeah, unfortunately, like the template teaches you that go to school, get a job, get married, whatever. It's not if I do this, whatever reflexive property. I forget the properties in math. If I do this, I get that. Yeah, it doesn't. It's like humans are multidimensional people. Why do we think in one dimension or two dimensions? It never made sense to me at a young age, so I captured that quick. But it wasn't just, oh, should I do this or should I do that? It's like, maybe you do both. Maybe you do none of them. Well, like you kind of have to find yourself a little bit and don't lose yourself because once you're in that sauce, like one thing I did, I think I left Facebook when I was like 20 and I still haven't been back on. So, and the reason I did that was grew up with MySpace, right? How old were we? Like 14, 13? Like we were,
yeah.
yeah. So
Around
like,
13, 13 to 14, around there.
yeah, so like you're going through puberty with that thing. And then if you stay on those social medias, yeah, it's cool and it does things, but it's like you're an adult now. Who are you without this thing? So when I leave Facebook, I got so much more stuff done. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. That's when I started promoting. I had 9 positions in 10 years, right? Because I wasn't distracted and I could find who I really was again, not just like that was a piece of me. It's an additive to you, but it shouldn't be a full component to you. And I'm glad I made those decisions young because you can get lost in it very quickly.
Yeah, definitely in social media, man. I feel like I got lost for a little bit, but then I started utilizing it more. It was like at that time I was transitioning more into the business side, so I was
hmm
going through the computer and cell phone repair. So that's when me and my business partners utilized it as, you know what, this might be a moneymaker for us.
I think even today's world, because now I'm back on Instagram and stuff like that, but a little bit of LinkedIn, but it's definitely good for the business and marketing. But I've also seen friends use it for their business and, consider getting off of it because they want to do what I kind of did and kind of gather themselves back, but they wouldn't do it because their business, which I understand. But then years later, they choose to do it. And because they're like, at this point right now, my business can take a break just to get myself back.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's what I did, man. I took a break from social media to really catch myself, man, because I was pretty much losing myself because I didn't even know what I really wanted anymore. I was like, man, I'm
yeah,
just done with
dude.
business. At first, I
So
was like, man, I'm done with business. I'm done with everything. I just want to go back. But it wasn't because I'm done in business. I was just done with the stuff that I was doing. I feel it was a repetitive cycle already, so it
and
wasn't worth it anymore.
you start weighing your life out in coffee spoons. That comes from one of my favorite poems of all time. Pretty much the monotony of life. But yeah, man, it just sometimes it is good at times, but sometimes it's too much frequency and too many vibes. You got so much frequency in the airwaves. You got all these chatters going on. Your brain's freaking about to explode. Sometimes you just got to marinate in your own sexiness, whatever you want to call it. Just do
Yeah,
that.
man, whatever you want to call it, but yeah, it's the same thing, man. You have to just take a break, man. Like all these likes, all these engagements. Don't get me wrong, man. You'll see me on LinkedIn all day, man. But it doesn't mean that I'm 100% focused into it. I'm just like, that's my time
Mhm.
when it's 5 minutes of the day, 10 minutes of the day. I'm not like there for 4 hours a day checking my stuff. It's more everything that I do is pretty much on LinkedIn is automated already. I already pretty much have all my videos, posts. I don't really go into it. I barely
Dude,
respond. I barely respond to my messages, man. So
yeah, I mean that's kind of the flow it all, and it's also your circadian rhythm and how your mind works and stuff. 'Cause I'll give you an example. Like for me, creativity wise, personally, I'm most creative at night for multiple reasons. I mean, one, I just think that's my rhythm is. Two, I'm not distracted. While the world sleeps, I design and do stuff, right? So when I would actually make design diagrams, it'd usually be from like 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., whatever. Sometimes my boss asked me, why are you working so late on this? Like, cause it's not about it's like not about the exact time. It's the time my brain can do that. Then I'm more like a little bit more rational in the morning, like the other side of the brain, the math side of the brain, when I can engineer. So now I can wake up at whatever 8, 9, 10, and actually engineer that. And about 2 p.m. I'm like the most like ambitious, I'm outgoing and stuff. So just understanding that about yourself. Like if I was literally to make, let's say like a not crazy network design, but if I was to do it like at night and say it would take me like 6 hours, if I tried doing that during the day where people team chatting me and doing all this other stuff, it would probably take me like 17 days because I would get 2 hours done, get distracted. And creativity is weird. Your mind needs to go deep into the ocean and really be there. And once you get that team chat, whatever, you have to come all the way back to the surface. You can't instantly just come down, like at least I can't. So once you get distracted, you're like, okay, well, what was I working on again? I got this diagram half done. It's like you're painting for an hour, then you have to leave, come back, paint for an hour, you gotta leave. It's difficult doing that, even being an
Yeah,
architect.
that is like when I started doing like something in video editing, graphic designing, anything in designing. Because for me, it's the design aspect of it. Like you pretty much for
Yeah.
years, you have a different way, and I want to learn that aspect of it as well. But pretty much for me, I've always been into the graphic designing, and that is very true, man. I would get
Mhm.
sidetracked on something else, or somebody will bug me, and the best time for me to focus will be when everybody's sleeping, or I would wake up extra early and just get it done because I
Or
knew
extra
nobody was
early
able to.
because they're still asleep. While the world sleeps, we work.
Yeah,
And because let's say you're making a brand logo and you have an idea, whatever, you're on Photoshop, whatever, you can probably knock it out 2, 3 hours. But now if you're getting distracted and stuff, like again, like I said, you have to save that PSD file, come back to it. What was I working on? It could be 2, 3 weeks later. You forget. So and once you figure out that about yourself, then you know how to execute. And everyone's different, right?
nah, yeah, that is very true. Man, we got to 1 hour and 50 minutes, man. You got anything
Man,
else to say? Anything else you want to talk about before we cut this?
I mean, I guess the main thing is, for anyone who hears this, if there's anything that you want to learn or know about, and I have the skill set, knowledge, or whatever that I can help you, just let me know. Me and Efren can do another audio, video, whatever it is, because my goal right now, on top of everything, is pushing whether you want to call it the next generation or whatever, pushing them forward the right way. So like, don't be afraid to ask. It'll give us more topics. If it's just a question you want to ask, that's fine. If you want me to set up like a routing switching lab, I can do that because I'm down to do another one of these. People are interested. So
Yeah, man, I've been pushing over 6 months, man, trying to get this audio.
yeah, that was on me. I was bringing straight Lagosaurus, man.
Nah,
Lagosaurus,
but
the
it's
ultimate.
both of us, man. I think we already talked about before, man. We get super ambitious and we get overwhelmed with stuff. So
Yeah, and again, look at this call. It's late at night for a reason. So
and it's good to have that little balance with both of us, man. I think both of us we've been trying to sync up, and it's finally made it happen. For anybody that's trying to get into IT or cyber, any recommendations, certifications, degrees, anything that you recommend to people, or any audiobooks, or any books for people to read.
hey, Efren, man, thank you so much, man, for the time. This was a fun experience, and I'm ready to rock with you again on the next one. So
Do you have any recommendations for audiobooks or books, anything like that?
I'm gonna start publishing some ebooks soon for all different types of categories. I'll keep you posted on that through social media and stuff. I'll get
You
it
know,
out there.
man.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be posting them, so you got.
I'm working on one right now, which has nothing to do with tech, because like I said, I do art and writing and creative writing. I've done that for like 15, 20 plus years. So I'll have working on that right now, like for Kindle. And then once I got that landscape down, then I'll bring really what people want to learn, but the more IT side, how to break into IT, how to become a great network architect, kind of stuff we talked about. And then also more the philosophical side and sociological side, psychological side, whatever you want to say, all those tiers stitched together too on the physical side, but like how to get your mind in the right spot. Cause a lot of people like reading stuff like that. So those will be coming and you'll see them through me and through Efren. So yeah.
Sounds good, man. And thank you again. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity, man. And I'm glad that you were able to get in. It took us 6 months to get this going, but we finally made it.